Sullivan Ballou might not be a household name by any means, but I can almost guarantee that anyone listening to this video will be moved by the words he wrote over 100 years ago. As he left to fight for the Union during the Civil War, he wrote one last letter to his wife, and it is one of the most patriotic and moving things I've read in a long time. Before we get to the letter itself, we're going to talk a little bit about what Sullivan's life was like, but if you want to skip all that, there's a link right below that'll take you straight to the letter. Thanks for listening. Sullivan Ballou was born on March 28, 1829, in Smithfield, Rhode Island. The young boy grew up with very little. His father had died when Sullivan was still quite young, and therefore it fell solely upon his mother to make ends meet for the family. Despite his family struggles, Sullivan proved himself to be a smart child and a very diligent student. He was able to go to the Phillips Academy with assistance from his extended family and even attended Brown University for 2 years when he got older. Unfortunately, Sullivan didn't graduate from Brown and dropped out in 1850, presumably due to the cost, but he didn't give up and managed to finish his law degree in Boston, New York. In 1853, Sullivan was admitted to the Rhode Island bar, and he became a practicing lawyer in his home state. A few years later, he married Sarah Hart Shumway, and the pair began starting their family together. They had 2 children, Edgar F., born in 1856, and William B., born in 1859. Sullivan Ballou spent his career as a public servant. In 1854, he was elected to be the clerk of the Rhode Island House of Representatives. He would later also serve as the Speaker of the body. Sullivan Ballou's professional career was quite short, however, for war broke out with the Confederate States in 1861 after the attack on Fort Sumter, and he immediately joined the Union cause. He enlisted in the 2nd Rhode Island Infantry and was given the rank of major. The force was quickly trained up in Washington during the early summer months of that year before being sent south to meet the Confederates at the Battle of Manassas, also known as the First Battle of Bull Run. It was at this time, as the 2nd Rhode Island Infantry were preparing to move into Virginia, that Sullivan Ballou wrote this famous letter to his wife. Tragically, as this first major battle of the American Civil War began, Major Sullivan Ballou was killed. Before we get to this amazing letter that Ballou left for his wife, it is worth mentioning the interesting circumstances that led to the discovery of this letter. After the First Battle of Bull Run, or the Battle of Manassas, a force from Georgia was occupying the battlefield. In the weeks after this battle, the frustrated Confederates took out their anger on the graves of the Union soldiers, desecrating many of the burials. The Confederates were especially cruel to the body they believed belonged to Colonel John Slocum, the commanding officer of the Rhode Island forces during the battle. The Confederates desecrated the body and dumped it into a nearby ravine. A few months later, in March of 1862, when the Confederates retreated from the site of the battle, a group of Rhode Island officials were finally able to venture to the site to retrieve some of the bodies. During this trip, they were led to the body of the commanding officer, and they managed to retrieve him from the ravine he was placed in. However, upon inspection of the man's insignia, it turned out not to be Slocum, but the body of Sullivan Ballou. It turned out the Confederates had mistaken Ballou's body for Colonel Slocum, and instead enacted their wrath upon the wrong man and dumped Sullivan Ballou's body into the ravine. As the officials inspected Ballou's body to try to discern who he was, they stumbled upon the letter he had written his wife. Ballou had never mailed the letter home and still had it in one of his pockets. They brought the letter back, as well as his body, to his home state of Rhode Island and to his wife. My very dear wife, indications are very strong that we shall move in a few days, perhaps tomorrow. Lest I should not be able to write you again, I feel impelled to write a few lines that may fall under your eye when I shall be no more. Our movement may be one of a few days' duration and full of pleasure, and it may be one of severe conflict and death to me. Not my will, but thine, O God, be done. If it is necessary that I should fall on the battlefield for any country, I am ready. I have no misgivings about or lack of confidence in the cause in which I am engaged, and my courage does not halt or falter. I know how strongly American civilization now leans upon the triumph of government, and how great a debt we owe to those who went before us through blood and suffering of the Revolution, and I am willing, perfectly willing, to lay down all my joys in this life to help maintain this government and to pay that debt. But, my dear wife, when I know that with my own joys I lay down nearly all of yours and replace them in this life with care and sorrows, when after having eaten for long years the bitter fruit of orphanage myself, I must offer it as their only sustenance to my dear little children? Is it weak or dishonorable while the banner of my purpose floats calmly and proudly in the breeze, that my unbounded love for you, my darling wife and children, should struggle in fierce though useless contest with my love of country? I cannot describe for you my feelings on this calm summer night, when 2,000 men are sleeping around me, many of them enjoying the last, perhaps before that of death, and I, suspicious that death is creeping behind me with his fatal dart, am communing with God, my country, and thee. I have sought most closely and diligently, and often in my breast, for a wrong motive in this hazarding the happiness of those I loved, and I could not find one. A pure love of my country, and of the principles I have often advocated before the people, and the name of honor, that I love more than I fear death, have called upon me, and I have obeyed. Sarah, my love for you is deathless. It seems to bind me with the mighty cables that nothing but omniscience can break, and yet my love of country comes over me like a strong wind and bears me irresistibly on all those chains to the battlefield. The memories of all the blissful moments I have spent with you come crowding over me, and I feel most deeply grateful to God and you that I have enjoyed them for so long, and how hard it is for me to give them up and burn to ashes the hopes of future years, when, God willing, we might have still lived and loved together and seen our boys grow up to honorable manhood around us. I know I have but few claims upon divine providence, but something whispers to me, perhaps it is the wafted prayer of my little Edgar, that I shall return to my loved ones unharmed. If I do not, my dear Sarah, never forget how much I love you, nor that, when my last breath escapes me on the battlefield, it shall whisper your name. Forgive my many faults, and the many pains I have caused you. How thoughtless, how foolish I have oftentimes been. How gladly would I wash out with my tears every little spot upon your happiness, and struggle with all the misfortune of this world to shield you and my children from harm. But I cannot. I must watch you from the spirit land and hover near you while you buffet the storms with your precious little freight, and wait with sad patience till we meet to part no more. But, oh Sarah, if the dead can come back to this earth and flit unseen around those they loved, I shall always be near you in the garish day and the darkest night, amidst your happiest scenes and gloomiest hours, always, always, and if the soft breeze fans your cheek, it shall be my breath, or the cool air cools your throbbing temples, it shall be my spirit passing by. Sarah, do not mourn me, dear. Think I am gone and wait for me, for we shall meet again. As for my little boys, they will grow as I have done, and never know a father's love and care. Little Willie is too young to remember me long, and my blue-eyed Edgar will keep my frolics with him among the dimmest memories of his childhood. Sarah, I have unlimited confidence in your marital care and your development in their characters. Tell my two mothers I call God's blessing upon them. Oh, Sarah, I wait for you there. Come to me and lead thither my children. Well, folks, that's all we got for you today. Let us know what you thought about this letter from Sullivan Ballou, and if you made it this far, why not subscribe and maybe like this video? Let us know also if you have any suggestions for what we should talk about in the future. We'll catch you next time. Thank you.